Let's go to the real question that everyone asks sooner or later. Does God exist? It's one of the most Googled questions every year. That tells me that it isn't just a philosophical hobby. It's personal. It's existential. People aren't just curious. They're searching. Because deep down, we all want to know if we're just walking chemistry or if there's meaning, if someone is behind it all. Now, let me be upfront. I can't pull God out of a box and say, there he is. Case closed. This isn't a magic trick, but it's about following the evidence wherever it leads. So in this video, I'm going to give you 5 major reasons to take the idea of God seriously. Number 1, philosophy. Because this question refuses to go away. And for good reason. It touches on purpose, morality, beauty, and meaning. Sure, philosophy is rhetorical, but it wrestles with the things that science can't measure. And number 2, science, biology, cosmology, and even archaeology. I'm not saying science proves God, but it raises some big questions that materialism struggles to answer. Number 3, scripture. Yes, it's biased. Every sacred text is. But bias doesn't mean force. The Bible's claims and the internal coherence of its message still demand serious engagement. Number 4, near-death experiences and end-of-life dreams and visions, ELDVs. These are experiential, sure, but they're also global, cross-cultural, and remarkably consistent. People of all faiths and sometimes no faith report things medical science can't fully explain. Many even report of meeting Christ despite being from non-Christian backgrounds. Alongside NDEs, we need to talk about ELDVs. Hospice workers, nurses, and even skeptical doctors consistently report patients, especially those days or hours from death, describing visions of deceased loved ones, bright beings, or peaceful places. These aren't hallucinations from failing brains. Many happen to patients who are completely lucid. And what's more, the consistency across cultures and belief system is staggering. Whatever's happening here is not easily written off as brain chemistry. Something's going on, and it's worth paying attention to. And number 5, personal testimony. Subjective, absolutely, but powerful. Millions of people through history claim not just to believe in God, but to experience Him through visions, healings, and other unexplained phenomena. These experiences are deeply transformative and often defy natural explanation. Are they delusional, or is it something deeper going on? This isn't about shutting down doubt, it's about opening up discussion. So whether you are a skeptic, a seeker, or a long-time believer, I invite you to take another look. Let's go. Here's my philosophical argument. Let's start with a simple question. If there's no God, why do we miss Him? Across every culture, era, humans have believed in some form of higher power. Why? Because something within us keeps on asking, keeps longing. C.S. Lewis, the atheist turned Christian, observed, if I find myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. This isn't just poetic musing, it's logical inference. Every natural desire corresponds to a real object. Hunger to food, thirst to water. So if we possess a deep-seated longing that nothing in this world can fulfill, perhaps it's because we were designed for something beyond it. Even Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher who declared God is dead, wasn't celebrating. He was warning. He recognized that without God, we risk losing our grounding for purpose, truth, and morality. Now consider the universe itself. Modern cosmology tells us that the universe is expanding, suggesting it had a beginning, a singular point from which all space, time, and matter. This implies that the cause of the universe must exist outside space and time. Much like a television's inventor exists outside the television, the creator isn't confined by the creation. Former atheists have grappled with these realities. Alistair McGrath, once an atheist, found that the Christian worldview provided a more coherent understanding of reality than atheism. A pivotal moment came during his research in molecular biophysics, where he experienced a profound sense of God's presence. Similarly, historian Neil Ferguson transitioned from atheism to Christianity, influenced by reflections of the moral void left by atheism and the historical failures of atheist societies.
I'm a lapsed atheist, Jordan. I go to church every Sunday precisely because, having been brought up an atheist, I came to realize in my career as an historian not only that atheism is a disastrous basis for a society. Atheist societies have probably committed more violations of human rights than any others, but also because I don't think it can be a basis for individual ethical decision-making. Churchill was a Christian, and I think has to be understood as such. So I am a lapsed atheist and proud of it.
And it's also worth noting that many who step away from the faith aren't necessarily rejecting the idea of a higher power. Often they're grappling with painful experiences, unanswered prayers, or disillusionment with religious institutions. It's less about denying God's existence and more about wrestling with His perceived silence or the actions of His followers. So in summary, the universal longing for God, the implications of a universe with a beginning, and the transformative experiences of former skeptics all converge to suggest that belief in God is not only rational, but deeply human. So let's continue this exploration. All right, let's talk science. Now, some folks treat science and faith like sworn enemies, like Darwin versus Jesus in a steel cage match, but they're not. Science doesn't say there is no God. That's not its job. Science is empirical. It deals with observation, measurements, and repeatable results. It asks how things happen, not why they exist in the first place. Now here's the twist. The more we observe, the more we realize how little we actually know. Let's start with the beginning of the universe. We know it's expanding, Cosmology 101. Expansion means a starting point, and everything that begins to exist must have a cause. That's the Callum cosmological argument, thank you. William Lane Craig. Even atheist physicists like Stephen Hawking admitted the universe had a start. If time, space, and matter all began, then whatever causes exists outside of time, space, and matter. That's not magic. That's logic. Thomas Aquinas made the same point centuries ago. Everything that moves needs a mover. You can't just keep going back forever. Somewhere there had to be an unmoved mover. Now, science has made incredible progress, but let's not kid ourselves. It's still in its infancy. We've mapped human DNA, landed robots on Mars, and still we can't agree on how consciousness works or what 95% of the universe is made of. Dark matter and dark energy. Anyone? Even methods we trust like carbon dating have limitations. They assume a constant rate of decay and stable conditions, which isn't always the case. When assumptions shifts, so do the dates. And then there's the design question. Look at the fine-tuning of the universe, gravity, the speed of light, the strength of the nuclear force. If any of these constants were off by even a tiny fraction, life wouldn't exist. It's like walking into a control room where every dial is perfectly set for life and saying, weird coincidence. Or take DNA, the instruction code inside every living thing. It's not just random chemicals, it's a language, a digital, self-replicating, 4-letter alphabet that builds everything from mushrooms to mammals. It's not random. It's deliberate. Francis Collins, who led the Human Genome Project, said DNA is the language of God. He was an atheist before the science led him to faith. Or consider the cell, a microscopic city with power stations, mitochondria, a garbage disposal, highways, and delivery trucks, motor proteins. If you shrunk yourself down and walked inside a cell, you'd think you are in a sci-fi film, designed, efficient, and wildly complex. And let's not forget vegetation, plants that breathe in what we breathe out, and vice versa. Trees that produce food, oxygen, and shade. Pollination systems involving insects, colors, scents, and timing. This isn't chaos. This is choreography. Science can't explain why it's all so beautifully balanced, but it keeps bumping into the fact that it is. Now, I'm not saying that science proves God, but let's be honest, the more we learn, the more things look deliberate. And the idea that it's all just random, no mind behind it, it's starting to sound more like faith than fact. So yeah, I trust science. I also trust it enough to admit it has limits. And maybe, just maybe, what we're seeing is the fingerprint of something or someone far greater.
People are thinking, well, if a scientist speaks, it must be right.
Right.
Well, when I say equals MC squared, yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
Okay, because we know that's true.
Right.
We have the benefit of decades of theory, experiment, and observation.
So much so that it now becomes a law.
We can call it a law if you want. We stopped calling things laws.
Yeah.
We did, just because until the 20th century, it was laws of thermodynamics, laws of gravity, laws of electricity, and then we just stopped that.
Right, yeah.
Because we found that as thorough and as accurate and as brilliant as all those laws were, we realized that they may be incomplete.
Ooh, I love that.
And that's different from being wrong.
Yes.
It's a whole other different thing.
Oh, that's lovely.
Okay, so
incomplete.
It's just incomplete.
All right, let's keep going. Okay, so let's talk about the Bible. Now, I get it. Mentioning scripture in a conversation about God feels a bit like quoting your mom to prove she's always right. Of course it's biased. Every sacred text is. It's a perspective. But bias doesn't equal falsehood. It just means you have to weigh the claims honestly. And when it comes to the Bible, the claims are bold. We're not talking vague spiritual advice like be kind and try yoga. The Bible names names, dates, places, rulers. It roots its message in real history and real geography. It's not just once upon a time. It's in the reign of King Herod, during the reign of Caesar Augustus, and outside the city gates of Jerusalem. That's unusual. Then there's the sheer scope of it. 66 books, over 40 authors, written across 3 continents and 3 languages over 1,500 years. And yet somehow it tells a unified story, creation and restoration. The level of coherence over that span of time, that's impressive. Now let's get even more specific. The Bible doesn't just claim God exists. It claims God revealed himself, not only through nature, but through people, prophecy, and ultimately a person. Jesus. And here is where it gets wild. The Hebrew scripture, the Old Testament, contains hundreds of prophecies, many written centuries before Jesus, that he fulfilled. I'm talking about things like born in Bethlehem in Micah 5:2, entering Jerusalem on a donkey, Zechariah 9:9, betrayed for 30 pieces of silver, Zechariah 11 verse 12 and 13, pierced hands and feet, Psalm 22, before creation was invented. The skeptics will say, well, maybe the New Testament writers just made it all fit. Fair, but the prophecies were part of Jewish scripture long before Jesus showed up. Even secular scholars agree that. Then there's archaeology. Time and time again, people said the Bible got it wrong until someone found a city, a stone inscription, a coin, or a scroll that proved otherwise. No book has been so attacked and so consistently vindicated. And let's not forget Jesus himself. He wasn't just a teacher or a moral philosopher. He claimed divinity, he forgave sins, he raised the dead, and he said, if you see me, you've seen the Father. And the resurrection, that's the central claim of Christian faith. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, pack it all up, it's game over. But if he did, that changes everything. Paul, a former skeptic turned apostle, said this in 1 Corinthians 15. If Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless and so is your faith. That's either gutsy, honest, or complete madness. And here's the thing, you don't have to agree with the Bible, but it refuses to be ignored. It's not just a book, it's a movement. It's shaped nations, cultures, laws, music, art, and moral codes. You literally can't understand history without it. And billions of people across time, race, class, and education level have read it and said this is no ordinary book. So yeah, it's biased, but it might also be telling the truth. All right, let's talk about something a little stranger. NDEs, near-death experience, and end-of-life visions. Now, I know that this is the part where people get a little squirmy. Oh great, here comes the tunnels, the warm lights, and someone's long-dead pet Labrador greeting them in a field of sunflowers. Sounds a bit too Hollywood, right? But here's the awkward truth. It's happening. And it's not just once or twice. It's global, cross-cultural, and surprisingly consistent. People from all walks of life, atheists, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, and even hardcore skeptics have flatlined, called it out, clinically dead, and then come back describing strikingly similar things. A sense of peace, an overwhelming presence of love, an encounter with a being of light. And wait for it, many say they met Jesus. Now let's be clear, I'm not saying that every NDE account is true or accurate. There are hoaxes, embellishments, and stories that sound like a bad acid trip. But many of these people didn't want to believe it, now they can't see what they saw. Take Howard Storm, a former atheist and art professor who died, went to a terrifying place, cried out for help, and was rescued by a presence he later identified as Jesus. Not a vague light, but Jesus Christ. Or Randy Kate, a man who was a successful businessman. His account of clinical death involves meeting Jesus in an incredibly detailed, emotional, and specific encounter. And he shared it in interviews, books, and videos that have moved thousands. And there was also John Burke, a pastor who compiled and studied over 1,000 NDEs for over 30 years and wrote Imagine Heaven. Not every story he cataloged comes from a Christian, but the recurring theme of a loving, just, radiant God is hard to ignore. You'll find dozens, if not hundreds, of these testimonies on YouTube now. People like Dr. Mary Neal, an orthopedic who drowned while kayaking and saw a heavenly realm. Ian McCormick, a surfer who was stung by box jellyfish and given a vision of Jesus and a second chance. Jeffrey Long, a radiation oncologist who founded the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation and has cataloged thousands of cases. These are not your neighborhood conspiracy theorists. These are doctors, business executives, academics, people who had everything to lose and nothing to gain by going public with their stories. Even end-of-life visions, the ones reported by hospice nurses and palliative care workers, often include patients moment before death describing vivid visions of loved ones, angels, or a man in white. Sometimes they sit up with sudden clarity and joy despite the days of unconsciousness.
Here's a paranormal phenomenon that happens to almost everyone at the end of life. We're going to be talking about visioning. Visioning is an actual sign and symptom of death and dying. It happens to almost everyone. It happens so often that we actually put it in our educational books to educate patients and their families to expect this. So what actually is it? Visioning is when people who are dying will start seeing their dead relatives, dead loved ones, dead neighbors, friends, pets, anyone who has brought them comfort in their life. They will actually start visually seeing them, sometimes even having conversations with them. So to be clear, medical professionals do not know why this happens. However, I have to talk about it because it happens so much. It is so normal. It's literally a normal part of death and dying. Many people in the comments, I'm sure, will say, oh, it's because they're having hallucinations. It's because they're on so many medications. It's because they have lack of oxygen to the brain, so they start seeing things. Let me tell you this. We don't know why it happens. I don't know why it happens. But what I can tell you is it is not those things people always think it is. How do we know? Because as medical professionals, we do see what hallucinations look like. We do see what psychosis looks like or delirium looks like. We do see what low oxygen to the brain looks like. Visioning looks nothing like that.
Creepy? A little, but also compelling. And look, yes, oxygen deprivation can do funky things to your brain. But here's what's strange. The consistency, the clarity, and the lasting transformation these experiences cause. These people don't come back with wild prophecies or new religions. They become gentler, kinder, more focused on love, justice, and forgiveness. And again, let's not miss the point. People from non-Christian backgrounds, Muslims, Hindus, atheists, have encounters with Jesus, not Vishnu, not Buddha, not a vague cosmic energy, just Jesus. Sometimes they don't even know who he is until later. That's not cultural conditioning. That's something else. Now, could it be hallucinations? Could it be the brain's way of coping with death? Maybe. But then why are doctors baffled? Why are specific details described from the operating room while someone was clinically dead? Why are people seeing what they were never in the position to see? Okay, this isn't definitive proof, but it's another breadcrumb in the trail. And I don't think we can sweep it under the rug and say, well, that's just chemicals. Nope, something's happening here. And medical professions are the first to admit. We don't know what consciousness really is. So take that as you will. But as far as I'm concerned, these experiences, especially with the ones that point directly and consistently to Jesus, are worth paying attention to. All right, next up, let's talk about something equally subjective, but just as powerful, personal testimony. Yes, it's personal, but it's also been happening for thousands of years. So let's go.
I started becoming an established drug dealer in the city. People would see me, they would know who I was from different neighborhoods, and I was able to raise young boys up, and everybody around me started getting money. So now I'm not just the one dude getting money, everybody got money. So I'm driving down the street, I had the hard top up, and I'm just driving down the street, you know, man, I'm just listening to beats, and I'm about to drop him off. I pull up to his house, and when I pull up to his house, shots just ring out. Pop, 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 pop. 10 shots go through my Lexus, and it's a convertible. It's no bigger than this little area that I'm in, like right here. The first thing I said is, God, don't let me die like this. And I remember, like, I never felt love like this in my life. I felt this overwhelming peace, overwhelming love, overwhelming sensation just start coming over me. And I just did not know what, I was like, yo, what is going on? I just started crying. I'm like, yo, what is going on with me? Ain't nobody around me. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on with me?
Now let's talk personal experience. Yeah, I know. Cue the skeptic alarm. Oh no, here we go with feelings and visions and someone's uncle who got healed after watching Christian television at 2 a.m. But here's the thing, personal testimony is the oldest and most stubborn evidence out there. From ancient shepherds to modern scientists, people across every century, culture, and continent have claimed not just to believe in God, but to encounter Him. And we're not talking about vague spirituality here. We're talking about people who say they've experienced something real, something personal, something that has changed them forever. Take Paul the Apostle, first century religious terrorist. Then he says he met Jesus on the road, went blind for 3 days, and flipped his whole life upside down. He didn't get a promotion. He got beaten, shipwrecked, and eventually executed. And he stuck with the story. Oh, fast forward to now. Millions of people today, millions, still tell stories of God showing up in their lives through answered prayers, visions, supernatural peace and chaos, radical forgiveness, healing from addictions, miraculous provision, and more. These aren't just televangelists with suspicious hair. These are normal people. Your neighbor, your co-worker, the guy who used to sell weed but now leads worship. And for sure, some people lie or exaggerate, but not all of them. And not when the cost is ridicule, rejection, and losing everything. Think of people in countries where converting to Christianity could literally get them killed, and they still do it. Why? Because something happened. This isn't just emotionalism. You don't change your ethics, your relationships, your priorities, your entire worldview based on a passing feeling. That's not normal. Something deep is at play. Even hardened skeptics have had sudden unexpected moments where they've encountered something they can't explain. Maybe it was a dream, a voice, a piece that didn't make any sense. A moment where everything inside them says, this is real. C.S. Lewis called himself the most reluctant convert in all England. He didn't want to believe, but the evidence, the reason, and the strange persistent sense of being pursued eventually wore him down. Many today still describe that same pursuit. You don't have to be a mystic to believe in God. But for many, it was a moment, small or big, that made all the difference. A moment of grace, of revelation, of encounter. Now, can people be wrong about their experiences? Of course. That's why we test them. We don't take every dream or claim at face value. But dismissing all of it outright? That's not skepticism. That's arrogance. Personal testimony isn't the whole case, but it's a huge part of it. Because if God is real and personal and relational, then it makes total sense that He'll reveal Himself to people personally. And here's a kicker. Across time, culture, gender, language, and denomination, these testimonies almost always echo the same core themes. God is real, God is holy, God is love. and Jesus is at the center. That's not nothing. So yeah, testimonies aren't airtight arguments. They're not disposable either. When the same story keeps getting told across thousands of years by people who have nothing to gain, maybe it's time to listen. So let's take a step back. We've covered 5 different but surprisingly connected reasons to take the idea of God seriously. Philosophy reminds us that this question won't go away because it lives where science can go, in meaning, morality, beauty, and purpose. Science doesn't prove God, but it keeps stumbling over signs that the universe might not be an accident. Scripture invites us into ancient, coherent, and enduring worldview, and still shapes hearts and minds today. NDEs and ELDVs whisper that there's more beyond this life and that people all over the world are meeting the same person on the other side. And personal testimony shows us what happens when that person breaks in, not just to history, but to someone's Tuesday afternoon. None of these are silver bullets, I get that. But together they form a mosaic, a pattern, a trail of breadcrumbs that doesn't demand blind faith, but invites honest curiosity. Because if God is real, if he really is the author behind the story, the artist behind the universe, the father behind every longing, then maybe the reason this question won't go away is because he doesn't want to. So whether you're skeptical, seeking, or walking in faith, thank you for giving this the time it deserves. Thanks for watching. God bless, and I'll see you on the next one.